I've never been a gamer, but I used to be really into Sonic. In third grade one day, I heard that one of my friend's favorite show was Sonic, which I'd never heard of in my entire life. So, after school on the big computer in my grandparents' house, I went to YouTube, that cool website I had recently learned about, typed in Sonic, and watched probably everything I saw. The character had the same hair as my OC, so it felt like fate. Before I could even process what I was bearing witness to, Sonic became almost the only thing I thought about for the next couple years. This was the time when I first became known for my art, because I would draw the character over and over and over and over and over again. He's very easy to draw, so I drew Sonic and his friends, even created my own characters, made a few comics as well. I listened to all the music, watched all the YTPs, AMVs, TV shows, movies, documentaries, online games. I don't know, I couldn't tell you what it was, but a world had opened up to me that just completely engulfed and probably transformed me in some way I couldn't possibly appreciate now. That was until I left. I somehow knew I had to grow out of Sonic. This was a show for children. Besides, the only reason I think I was allowed to watch it was because my parents didn't really know what it was. They didn't know about all the fighting, the weird YouTube videos I thought were funny. I knew that whenever I started to really like a show, I'd soon learn there was something wrong with it, and I'm told not to watch it anymore. The coolest shows were demonic, or for adults, or they just vaguely tell me it was bad when a male character wore a dress as a joke, whatever it was. So I decided an appropriate age to grow out of the speedster was when I was 10. And I did. When I think back on my Sonic phase, I'm surprised it was only maybe 2 years, if even that long. Given how much of who I am today is because of Sonic, I would have thought it was longer than that. At my grandparents' house, they hated how much I watched television. Whether it was for the content or just the degree to which I watched it. Go outside, find something else to do. But no, I was transfixed. I was hypnotized by the glow of the screen, the cartoons, the sitcoms. Half the time, I don't think I even necessarily enjoyed what it is I was watching. But it just ate me, man. Occasionally, my grandfather or my aunt would just walk by and switch it off. This was back when TVs had buttons. To which, of course, how else was I to respond but to get angry? Television is bad for you. The cartoons, they rot your brain. You get really mad because the television is rotting your brain. This isn't real. At a time in my life, Sonic genuinely felt more real than anything I'd ever heard or saw in my world. The pictures made me feel things. The music, the very bright, colorful characters made me imagine and really live in a realm that I lacked access to in my day-to-day. I remember once when I was in elementary school, at the time I would have been in my peak Sonic era, a friend that I literally had since we were in diapers called me mysterious. I'm mysterious. I consider you one of my closest friends, and I'm mysterious. I guess because I didn't talk as much as the others. I remember at church one time this kid again, who I would have known from when we were babies, randomly asked me, "Why don't you talk? Why are you so quiet?" Just came out of nowhere. I don't think I don't talk. There always seemed to be a buffer between how I saw things, how I saw myself, and how the world saw me. I'm playing with my friend in a park. I'm running. I'm having a good time. I hear, "You go, Biggs. Lose that weight." I remember how I look to others. You have a big belly. So you must be living a certain way. It's all that television. Then in a few years, when I became a teenager and got taller, I'd start to actively just lay around and watch anime and cry all day. Then people congratulate me on losing all that weight. I worked way hard as a child to lose that weight than I ever did when I got taller. Naturally, then start calling me scrawny. The real world, the material, the day-to-day, just never, ever seemed to match how I felt. I was being called things I didn't feel. People always did things that didn't make sense. I felt like there was some planet I came from that I only had access to through the screen. And functioning on this earth with its rules was a never-ending piece of theater. I first learned that word when I had a classmate in 7th grade who had it. She always made a scene, big outbursts, always in her own little world, and seemingly only ever misunderstanding or protesting against the things in this one. I looked it up and it actually seemed to describe very well, if not completely, what it was that I felt. Communication difficulty, niche, maybe. Obsessive interests, poor eye contact, a general feeling of detachment from the people and things around me, or at least so it would seem. I told my parents. They told me I was confused, and that was that for a while.
Hey. Hey. That looks like the best book ever.
Yeah, it is.
Owen is a middle schooler who's feeling a little lost when he encounters a slightly older girl who seems just as odd as him, except she seemed to know something he didn't.
The Pink of Pig?
Yeah, it's the official episode guide. Do you watch?
Isabel's bathroom has a new supernatural infestation that no exterminator can take care of. It's the attack of the Drain Lords.
No.
Oh.
The Pinko Pig was one of those shows he knew about, but he couldn't watch.
Hey. You know what you should do?
He lied to his mom, who he must have known he was doing something wrong.
Can I have a sleepover at Johnny Link's house Saturday night?
Johnny Link? I didn't even know you guys were still friends anymore.
But in the glow of the screen, another world, another reality opened itself to him. One that felt more real than life itself. At least, the life of the material world.
Sometimes the pink opaque feels more real than real life.
And she knew it, and he knew it. Though maybe he struggled to admit this even to himself.
I actually think like what it's doing is really important, that it is very clearly a trans metaphor. Like it's very hard to miss it. If you know anything about the director, you know it's a trans metaphor. The movie itself has got very clear overt hints towards being trans, like it's colored in trans colors a lot. But I also think that it is really important that the film isn't explicitly transgender, that it doesn't say like this is just a transgender journey. Because
this year I've been speaking about escapism a lot, and why I'm generally against it. I began this year talking about stories which falsely affirm the status quo by promising that everything will work itself out in the end. A couple videos ago I spoke about the cannibalistic plasticity of a thing like tourism, and how dominant powers keep people subservient to them. But there is another angle to the conversation about escapism. One which may at a glance seem to refute my claims, but doesn't really. Seinfeld is a show I love which affirms the concept of a world that its society pretends is real but kicks you in the nards for indulging in its fantasy. Sonic is a franchise completely and utterly divorced from everything around me. It doesn't necessarily affirm anything, but instead clothes you in a context you couldn't dream of actually living in. But what I'd like to ask today is, what if that world feels more real than yours? Or reveals something in you that exists in deviance to the things around you, even challenging how you view yourself.
What's happening to me? How do I know these things? Am I going crazy?
No. Never let anyone convince you of that.
The question asked by I Saw the TV Glow is, well, which is the real world? The pretty pictures on the screen or the dull, drab colors of the suburbs?
I'm trying to go slow. I don't want to alarm you.
When the memories seem to speak even when you try to suppress them, is there a reality, a form of reality that you're repressing?
Will you tell me where you've been all these years?
That's what I've been trying to do. I've been there. Inside the show. Inside the pink opaque.
Now, you heathens are probably expecting me to say the drab world is real, touch grass, kiss your mom. But perhaps reality is not that simple. The Pink Pig is not exactly a real show, but it is based on one very real, very iconic show that certainly exists in our world. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is the exact type of show that I would have thought was the coolest thing in the world when I was younger, but I'd never in 10,000 years be allowed to watch. Based on the movie of the same name, Buffy follows a teenage girl who's been chosen to be the legendary Vampire Slayer.
That's not what I'm looking for.
Are you sure?
I'm way sure.
A title which can only be had by one person, one girl, who is then replaced when the last one dies. She fights vampires, demons, and all manner of wacky supernatural ne'er-do-wells, while also trying to be a teenage girl and go to high school and chase boys and all of that.
And honey, try not to get kicked out.
The show is as goofy and campy as you would expect from that premise, but it's also kind of iconic. I watched it for the first time for this, and oh god, I genuinely did not expect to love it as much as I do. This is goated, actually. According to Joss Whedon, who created the show and the movie, Buffy was meant to be a response to the final girl trope of horror. Usually, women are either damsels in distress, or actively being hunted and killed, while flailing and crying in these kinds of stories. But Buffy is here to stand up to the odds and brave through all the trials in spite of also being a hormonal teenager who barely even knows who she is.
It's because you didn't have a strong father figure, isn't it?
It's just fate, Mom. I'm the Slayer. Accept it.
We should call the police.
No, we're not calling the police.
Buffy is one of those shows that's meant to be relatable to its intended audience. It's like Kim Possible. It probably influenced Kim Possible, except Kim Possible wasn't about demons, so I was actually allowed to watch it, I think. But Buffy is designed to situate its viewer in the shoes of our protagonist. When you're watching Buffy, you are Buffy. If you're watching Sonic, you are Sonic. Most of the time. What happens when you're not allowed by your parents, or really your society, to be that person on the screen?
Do you think I chose to be like this? Do you have any idea how lonely it is? How dangerous?
No, this is insane. Buffy, you need help.
I'm not crazy. What I need is for you to chill. I have to go.
No, I am not letting you out of this house.
You can't stop me.
You walk out of this house, don't even think about coming back.
Anymore.
Isn't that a show for girls?
And the trick of society was making him think that dream, that childhood dream that he had of wanting to become something else because that's who he truly was, it tricked him into thinking, oh, that's just nostalgia. Oh, that's just something empty that you were thinking before. We'll resell it to you over and over and over again. We'll make a new episode in the franchise for you, and it'll be less good, but it'll give you an echo of what you came before. And so you'll just be like, oh, that emotion I felt, it's just a dilution of that. It's just nothing, it's nothing real. And so it's how nostalgia is weaponized by the society to sort of say these feelings that we have for the past, these sort of desires to grow further, and even what came before this moment, like before colonization and, you know, everything that we have today. Like, oh, that didn't really exist. That was silly. That was primitive.
Boy, I have never seen a movie portray the experience of having to secretly watch your favorite shows like I Saw the TV Glow. Dude, for the first year that I was into anime, I hid it until I eventually got caught and then chose to voluntarily come out to my parents. I felt something in Naruto and Luffy that I never felt anywhere. It felt like I was taken into this world, into this reality, into a realm where I had a power that I just lacked in the material world. Like, when I watched Naruto, I could do anything. I could be anything, because the ramen boy was spat on and discarded in his world, but still rose, using the very traits which he was ridiculed for to prove his worth to everyone. Except, you know, these shows are also about demon possession, and there's lots of fighting, and scary monsters, and big breasts, and occasionally gay people.
Hey! Look at me! I'm a bugger!
It made sense to me, though.
あの旗、撃ち抜け。了解。
I could understand these worlds. The people said words I resonated with, and the colors, the characters, it felt real.
生きたい！私も一緒に海へ連れてって！
In the Pink Opaque, Owen accesses a world where are a pretty pink demon slayer. But of course, it's just a TV show. But is it? What is reality?
I don't know!
Cambridge deems it as the state of things as they are, rather than what they are imagined to be, or simply a fact. Collins calls it the nature of things, rather than imagined, invented, or theoretical ideas. Old Faithful Britannica calls it the true situation that exists. The commonality between these definitions is that reality refers to things as they are rather than as they are seen. But if we walk away from the Western definitions for a second, look at, for example, the Hindu perspective, there's not necessarily this binary division between the real and the imagined, as all of these ideas do exist within the context of existence. There are various kinds of realities and truths, all of them working together to exist within a larger plane of existence, which is called Brahman, or ultimate reality. In many different African traditions of reality, what is considered real is based on intuition, and what is collectively understood to be real by a community or a society, largely based on their own myths. These myths contain truths which dictate morality, and through this morality, value is found. The Pink Opaque is real in the sense that it is an idea that exists in the world as a fictional show within a fictional film. But it's also not real in the sense that, of course, the show doesn't actually exist, but it is a real show within the movie. In fact, it is one which might actually exist as a real reality within the movie. But it also exists as a real concept in people's minds who've watched the movie, based on their impressions of the movie, or in the real version of the show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Season 3, Episode 17, Enemies, is Angel acting?
Stop that! That guy just bugs me.
In the episode, Angel, Buffy's hot forbidden romance vampire boyfriend, is taken by her evil, possible lesbian lover, Faith, who takes his soul in order to conspire against her and her friends, replacing him with Evil Angel, or Angelus.
Faith, listen to me!
Why? So you can impart some special Buffy wisdom, that it? Do you think you're better than me, do you? Say it. You think you're better than me?
I am. Always have been.
Angel's with me.
And how'd you get him, Faith? You cast some sort of spell? Because in the real world, Angel would never touch you, and we both know.
But then, it is revealed that Buffy and Angel were actually conspiring against her.
I never knew you had so much rage in you.
What can I say? I'm the world's best actor.
Second best.
And Angel was only pretending to be taken by Angelus to trick her into revealing her true colors.
May I say something? Psych.
So was he acting? If Angel was acting, he deserves an Emmy. But was he really pretending to be Angelus?
Where do I start? Card? Fruit basket? Evisceration?
When Angel is delivering his astounding performance as Angelus, is it not just David Boreanaz playing Angelus?
Things change, Spiky. You gotta roll with the punches. Well, actually, pretty much got that part down, haven't you?
Very funny, mate.
He's played Angelus before and delivers the role well, but in this scene, is he playing Angel playing Angelus, or is he just playing Angelus? I mean, it can't be Angel playing Angelus because Angel isn't real, but he is a real character, a real performance, and in this same sense, is Angelus not also real? But to take it even further, Angel, Angelus, and David Boreanaz are all characters which are performed by the same body. David Boreanaz may be a real person in our world, but are we not all players on this stage? Does he not still perform according to the role society has assigned him? Is David Boreanaz more or less real than Angel or Angelus? When the cameras are rolling, whose performance are we seeing? In this frame, this is Angelus, because Angelus is being performed. Does his reveal in the following scene make him Angel instead? When the credits roll and we see David Boreanaz's name, does it then become neither character? Is it all the same? Is it none at all? Whoever he is, he deserves an Emmy.
That guy just bugs me.
The world of the pink opaque is not the world that Owen sees day to day, but does that mean it isn't real? Is the suburban life even more real? Why is it that his mother doesn't want him watching this show? Why is it that his father doesn't want him watching this show? What lies in this alternative reality that poses a threat to the world we see?
You can't tell anyone we're leaving. Not your mom. Not anyone.
Are those memories which he suppresses not real? Or is he truly just living in a simulation?
You have to tell my dad that I've been lying to him. I've been pretending to sleep here while my mom's in the hospital, and you can't let me go with her. I don't want to leave my home.
There's something. No, there's a lot of things. Almost everything about this world confuses me. Nothing anyone does makes sense. The more time I spend in it, the more time I learn about it, the more this world confuses and frustrates me. Always has. At the time I was enamored with Sonic, I don't think it was any of the particular shows themselves, besides maybe Sonic X. And like I said, I never played the official games, but the colors, the characters, the whole world of it was what took me. It made sense. In this world, I had control, I could manipulate the reality, and I started inventing my own worlds too. I started making plays which I directed and staged at my grade school's lunch hour concerts. I made my own book and printed and illustrated it myself. I began to make my own comic books and one-shot. Almost every minute of the day I was thinking about stories, inventing characters and drawing them, writing about them, dreaming about them. With my own pencils and crayons, I invented worlds, realities, alternative lives, those which looked and mirrored what I saw, imagined, filtered the material of the one I inhabited, the one which had a way of disappointing me, the one I just couldn't seem to figure out. With words I couldn't speak, people I couldn't relate to, that which could be rather than that which was.
Space, the final frontier.
Star Trek has accrued an audience of colorful people in the over 50 years it's been running. With its 12 TV series and 13 films I have attempted but failed to complete for this. Star Trek imagines a future where humanity has largely evolved past the petty nonsense that we used to discriminate against each other in present day, and invented new forms of discrimination to use to others.
Cause you fought about no longer exists. Give yourselves time to breathe. Give up your hate. You're welcome to live with us.
What about Star Trek do you think translates even after all of these years?
You know, I've changed my thoughts on it many times, because when I was younger, Star Trek was just like an escapist place where I could like go into and just be and sort of see myself in this future that was sort of like better than where I was now. As I grew older, it kind of became this aspiration of this better future that I started to believe was inevitable.
Star Trek is another property which has infamously attracted an audience of atypical people over the years. The Enterprise explores strange new worlds where Captain Kirk usually sees it as his duty to bang as many hot space ladies as possible, but in these worlds we see different kinds of people with their different politics, cultures, and conflicts. While chaos always inevitably ensues on these journeys, one constant is that our crew will have each other's backs, and anyone, regardless of how they look, how they are, or what they're into or aren't into, is accepted as they are. And together, we explored this strange alien galaxy of ours, attempting to understand their strange customs, because in the end, we're all a bunch of weirdos, aren't we? All of us, strange with our own quirks and hang-ups, trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
And then I remember wrestling really hard when Trump got elected the first time in the United States. I wrestled really hard with that because it was like, that was the first time I was like, oh, this inevitable trajectory of progress that I had sort of come to believe as a kid didn't match with reality. But I think it was ultimately like the way the world is, and Trump and all that was not for the best, but like for me, like it was a really important thing to start to do, because it got me to realize like, no, this future that this thing has inspired in me isn't inevitable. It is something that we have to actually push for and fight for and work for. And Star Trek is helpful as a tool to help be a thing that we can articulate this dream within. Like, this is what we are going for, but it is not inevitable. We actually have to fight for it.
In Star Trek, James T. Kirk is the captain of the Starship Enterprise.
Right, that's the spaceship they're on, right?
Yes.
But why does she find it so fascinating? That's what I don't get.
I don't know, maybe it's the characters.
What do you mean?
Like Spock, for example, he's half human, half alien. He has trouble dealing with his emotions.
Where did it say that?
It's just how he is.
Especially looking at Star Trek fans and how it's, expressed itself within the fandom, I think is where the real power of it lies, like even beyond the show itself. It's more about what it does within the person and the imagination that it opens, even if the series itself has its blemishes, because it's made in our material world with its problems.
And if you look at Star Trek fandom, what's so good about it is, there's always, it has some toxic fandom, as it always does. And they're very loud today, as many toxic fandoms are. But for the most part, I found that Star Trek fandom is very willing to be very critical and accepting of both Star Trek and accepting of flaws and accepting of many diverse groups of people.
A fan favorite character, what little of the vastness of Star Trek I've managed to complete, is Mr. Spock. A part of a race called the Vulcan, not quite human as they just follow logic, and are largely oblivious to human sensibilities of emotion and those kinds of unwritten social cues.
I'm in love with you, Mr. Spock.
This often lands him having a bit of a buffer between himself and his mostly human crewmates. But they love him anyway. He's loyal to his crew and they need him. He can never quite understand them though.
His blood does not burn. He is my friend.
It is said, thy Vulcan blood is thin. Are ye Vulcan, or are ye human?
He isn't entirely Vulcan either though. He's half human, so he struggles to fit in even with his own species. Mr. Spock is always a little bit on the outskirts of everything, but does what he has to do. What's logical?
Come on, Spock. Yield to the logic of the situation.
For all the good it'll do either of us.
Was buying food on campus one day after the most boring class in the world. I was in the line and before me were two guys talking. It wasn't some strange conversation. I didn't intentionally eavesdrop. They were just kind of loud. But the conversation, the bit that I caught, was just so interesting for how normal it was. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit disturbing. You know, this is the English version. You know how when you're with a female, yeah, and they do that thing that they do. I don't remember anything else. But I was kind of struck with that thought of, man, imagine what it would be like to be a normal person. Like, this is how the average guy my age talks and thinks. Because you see, there's not a single word in that whole 3-line dialogue exchange that I can relate to. I forget that most guys refer to women as females, which is, you know, it sounds a little slurish to me. Proven with the follow-up line about them doing that thing or being that way that we, the males, this entirely alien species, view them to be. I don't even know what they're talking about. Instead, I say girl because I'm a different kind of misogynist. But hearing these guys talk, I truly felt like Spock. Like an alien observing absurd human behavior. I'm not even being a hashtag male feminist about it. It was just genuinely so odd hearing them talk. Like, I couldn't relate to them at all. But I somehow understood that this was how most men are. I'm not really saying that in a derogatory way. I didn't feel like I was on some higher moral plane or anything. I just kind of felt like a weirdo. The same way I feel when I go to the barber. This is just how this category of person in this category of society operates. If you're watching something like this and you've reached this point, you're not the ones I'm talking about. Most guys don't watch internet videos this long. They go out and do things.
I like girls, you know that, right? I'm not into boys. What about you? Do you like girls?
I don't know.
Boys?
I think that I like TV shows.
I am to this day hesitant to use particular labels for how my boat does or does not float for a lot of reasons. 1, open fruitiness ain't the safest thing in these parts. 2, the part of my brain that tells me to jump out the window of a tall building when I think about getting a girlfriend or living a long, happy, monogamous marriage is the same part that has a small panic attack when I'm walking and encounter someone I vaguely know and have to do the math about what could be the most optimal response, if any at all. Do you wave, look at them, and give a light nod? I mean, look at them, my god, I can't not look at them, right? You see me, I see you clearly. What are we gonna do? Pretend as though we don't see each other? I mean, why not? Why do we have these arbitrary little customs anyway? It doesn't make any sense. I'm here, you're there. Can't we just leave it as that? What if they hate me? What if they take offense to my not looking at them? What if they think I'm being annoying if I do? And so on. You know that no matter what, I'm thinking about that encounter for the rest of the day, and then the following night, and then 5 years later, and so on and so forth. You know, only recently have I discovered that people go out for fun. You know what's out? Hurricanes, gangsters, lizards. What are we doing really? That's really what it's always been for me. Why go out with a girl when I have cinema? You want to see the world so much, I can draw up a world right now. Social contract theory is an officially recognized term which describes the idea of how society is built from a collection of made-up rules that we abide by as a sort of invisible contract. In Western philosophy, this goes back to ancient Greece, where Socrates would argue that the law is put in place for a reason. If he's sentenced to death, he shouldn't run off to exile or anything, we should all behave. The system works together for the good of everyone.
There's a place for everything, everything in its place.
Plato, however, might argue that these contracts only exist for certain people's convenience. Most people want to commit injustice, but don't because it would suck if they had injustice done to them.
I am in control of my emotions.
It's not so much about obedience, as Socrates believes, but purely to avoid disorder. It's not necessarily a good thing, it's a convenient thing. Fast forward to 17th century England, Thomas Hobbes would argue that social contract is made between people and authority, as the natural state of humanity without such rules is war and anarchy. John Locke would challenge this slightly by arguing that it is less about authority and more a matter of individual duty to respect each other's rights.
Identification with mythical icons is perfectly typical of your age group.
Mom, I'm not an age group. I'm me. Willow group.
I understand.
No, you don't. This may be hard for you to accept, but I can do stuff. Nothing bad or dangerous, but I can do spells.
You think you can, and that's what concerns me.
You know, in the past few months and years, I've been thinking more and more about Star Trek, and then also queerness as as an ethos. And queerness as an ethos I go back to like Jose Esteban Munoz, who's one of my favorite philosophers. I've been reading and talking about him a lot lately, where he sort of sees queerness not as like a sexuality-based oppression, but as a dream of the future, of a horizonality, an ideality of, you know, when you are queer, you are hoping for a day where you are not queer, and you are trying to create in your everyday interactions between people this new performance, sort of tying into Judith Butler's performativity, this new performance of a reality that does not have to be tied to this, oppressive present.
Queer was a word that aptly described how I felt, even though the connotations disturbed me. The time when just about everyone I knew started pairing off and acting like ninnies, it was almost as if in the grand play of life they all changed a line in the script and didn't tell me. It's ridiculous, the whole thing. I'm even getting told I'm potentially being sinful for not finding my value in someone else's pants. Just didn't get it, you know. I have liked women, or for that age, girls before, but I was never able to actually envision being with them. The idea made me so miserable. I liked their presence. I didn't hate them. I guess that was the criteria. If I don't actively detest you or can imagine possibly living with you for life and not killing you or myself one day, I must like you. Because that's the thing to do at this age.
I mean, look what I do to the people I'm supposed to care about. I had sex with the one person I've ever seen you be in love with.
I guess they're not gonna put you in the Best Friends Hall of Fame, but I don't know that I loved her. You know, I don't think I'm allowed to be in love.
In my mind, I wasn't queer. I mean, I was. I am. But not in that way. Maybe exactly in that way. But I just don't think it's as simple. I mean, it's a spectrum, isn't it?
Well, not all asexuals are aromantic.
Think of it this way. One could be aromantic or be aromantic while also being asexual or be asexual. So you could be BB or BA. As for me, CAB. See?
In my mind, it isn't any different from how not understanding the point of saying hello or goodbye, or why you use certain knives and forks for different foods, or why people like going to the barber makes me kind of queer.
I'm in control of my emotions.
The others believe that. I don't. No, I love you. I don't know why, but I love you. I do love you.
A bit later, I think, when I was eventually able to better appreciate the idea that this whole thing is a made-up contract, I just realized, you know, men don't have to like women. I just didn't. I just haven't. I don't think even when I thought I did.
Your mate said you weren't playing with computers so much. Into the new thing.
What new thing?
You know, you two. The whole Wicca thing.
They were talking about that? What did they say?
Talking about, you know, it's a phase. You'll get over it.
What?
Does that mean I won't, though? Or about men? I don't think I like men in that way, but then again, I have even more incentive to suppress any part of myself that might.
It would be illogical for us to protest against our natures. Don't you think?
But I don't know, maybe I'll eventually meet someone who has me smitten. Man, woman, or NB, it's possible. Maybe I'm just not ready. Maybe I just haven't met someone. Maybe none of this really exists, and we're all living in a world of arbitrary concepts that depends on its own fiction for its existence. And by refusing to participate, I'm making things difficult for people around me and or myself.
Fine then. But I hope you don't think this. See, I figured it out, love. You can't help yourself. You're addicted to the misery. That's why you won't tell your pals about us. Might actually have to be happy if you did.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're touching upon kind of a core thing with a lot of it, with kind of what I was talking about earlier. And like Jose Esteban Munoz touches upon that same idea too, of our society likes to put up identity boundaries. And it does so in a way to sort of delineate us versus them, right?
All I really know and have known is that the way that things are frustrates me. Because I live in this world, in a certain body, there are things that are expected of me, required even, to function within the construct of the world around me.
These buckets are there to sort of like put walls between us. Whereas like even something you're expressing here where you're saying like, I'm arrow ace or somewhere on that spectrum, but like the words don't perfectly fit you. That's fine. Like the words are meant to be helpful to like describe reality, but what a lot of people want it to be is a way to prescribe reality of like, oh, you are this thing, so you fit into that bucket, and it does inform how people view you once they slot you into that bucket, and then they filter it through, their cultural lens, which again is very based in cis heteropatriarchy, white supremacy, things like that.
In fiction, I can inhabit whatever body I want to, and live whatever life exists there. In this world, I have no choices. I have to do things, or at least I'm expected to do them. If I don't do them, I get punished. Whether that be social ostracization, financial difficulty, or just buffers in conversation.
Seems like you're always somewhere else lately.
High school was a living hell for me because the system is based on an archaic English construct that was made for a certain type of people of another time. But if I dared drop out or something, my goose would be cooked. You need a degree in this world. And everything's so expensive. I couldn't give less of a horse's ass about sports. But that's 50% of male-to-male conversation down the drain. I don't call women females either, so that's another 30%. You have to play the rule. Step in line. Or face the consequences of being a burden to society. Can you blame people for getting a little misanthropic? The boys have been going to church more recently, more than the girls even. This is the first time this has happened ever. Historically, more women have always been the ones who identify as Christian and or religious, and the big thing with the church, especially in my experience, has been that they're always trying to urge the young men to come out, or for the women and girls to encourage their husbands, fathers, and brothers to come. But something happened. More men are on fire for God now than ever before. Now that may seem a bit mind-boggling at first, but I know why. I've seen it happen in real time. This one guy I don't speak to anymore. I'll tell you why it is that I don't speak to him anymore. His girlfriend left him. Honestly, it was like seeing a bird freed from a cage. She's been so much happier since. Now, this man is someone who was openly an atheist and didn't believe in God or anything when I met him. But, he got his girlfriend, who's one of my friends, so they were, for most of the time I knew them in high school, a couple. The most toxic pair you've ever seen. Very Cory and Topanga coded, but I was on the outside and wasn't seeing it through this filtered, idealized ABC Disney-fied lens.
I don't have anything else of yours.
Yeah, you do. You have all my feelings about you, and I don't have any of yours.
The whole thing was always just sad, so truth be told, I was always very happy for the girl that she was able to find her freedom, but the guy, oh god. Now, this is post-high school, so I wasn't necessarily forced to interact with him in person anymore. After that breakup, I wouldn't be talking to him for more than a few more months. You see, guys, most of them are raised with this idea of what women are and aren't, what they should and shouldn't be in relation to them. The world as they see it and as we are raised to see it and interact with it is constructed and ordered in such a way that men grow up believing that there are certain checkpoints to reach, certain things they are entitled to earn when they perform certain acts and roles. This natural, essential order, which we colorful and possibly annoying people have chosen to call patriarchy.
They cannot touch her.
We are taught these rules through the words of our parents, the media we consume, even our language. The Western world is a patriarchal one, and even without intending to do so, we often perform patriarchy and uphold its ideas.
It does so in a way to sort of delineate us versus them, right? There's black versus white. There is gay versus straight. There's man versus woman. And usually that delineation is put into some level of hierarchy. A more versus conservative versus liberal, a more liberal view would be like, oh, well, these are just all different things, but they like don't have any context necessarily, or they don't necessarily have any bearing on your ability to succeed in society, and sort of like make invisible these like naturalized hierarchies. So conservatives will like explicitly believe in the hierarchy. Liberals will sort of ignore that they exist because of the society that we live in.
However, there have, of course, arisen movements which have sought to challenge and decenter this order, this perceived natural order. But the structure of this world is still a patriarchal one. You know, we're living in a world where women wear pants because they fought tooth and nail to be taken seriously enough to do that, but we still look at a guy funny if he wears a dress. Or even if you aren't explicitly discriminating, you may still make this subconscious register, hey,
He's a queer.
my guy became increasingly insufferable over the next few months, I'm not gonna lie to you. And I mostly put up with it because, hey, he's grieving, he'll get over it. He's going to be a little snappy. It's fine. But the nature of this grief was so... He started getting really mad at the world and the way people are these days. He's going to church more, getting involved. Nothing inherently wrong with that. Starts randomly ranting about men getting soft. Asking if I've heard about NoFap and MGTOW. Starts talking about God a lot, what God wants. Kendrick Lamar, his former favorite artist, is blaspheming by wearing a crown of thorns. My guy, since when have you ever cared about blasphemy? Do you understand a single song from that man? Starts ranting about how transgenders are mentally ill. Not that transphobia or homophobia are uncommon for the average Jamaican man, but my god, since when you start caring about that this much to run your mouth about people you don't even know? Boy, when Trump got elected, the general consensus and takeaway was that men are evil and should probably be harbored in bunkers, fed sometimes, and occasionally released to be used as breeding stock. To be quite honest, they're right. We are a terrible people. We don't have to be, but we are. A saving grace for me has always been the patriarchy. Blame not men, but the patriarch, and what it does to men and how they view themselves and the world around them. That's still probably true, but it's not what I feel. Before we're taught speech, we're assigned a gender, and treated as what our society has deemed to be that gender. As a result, there's this large construct, image, narrative about what men are and what women are, and as a result, in order to function within society, you must grapple with whatever that image is. The crisis that men have found themselves with is that this image has become so complicated, so muddled, so unobjective.
Come on, Spock. Yield to the logic of the situation.
certain entitlements that men are taught, even subconsciously, are betrayed, shattered even, torn. The big thing that my dude kept going on about was, what did I do wrong? I did all the things you're supposed to.
Well, how about just a cup of coffee? I come by the headquarters or something, and we could. Oh, okay. Did you get my flowers in the? You didn't get them. Couldn't I send some flowers?
I understood that actually. Not necessarily with dating, but just dealing with this world of images in general. So those young men, they turned to voices who told them that the world was fallen, that they were entitled to more than what they saw before them. We must return to this mythicized good time. That the radical subversives who make everything complicated and pluralistic and difficult would get their just desserts too, whether that be from Donald Trump or their botched idea of Jesus Christ.
Listen, you fuckers, you screwheads. Here is a man who would not take it anymore. Who would not let... Listen, you fuckers, you screwheads. Here is a man who would not take it anymore. A man who stood up against the scum, the c***s, the dogs, the filth, the shit. Here is someone who stood up. Here is...
I cut ties with him eventually. I tried to talk some sense into him whenever he brought that stuff up. I tried to hear him out and explain things, even resorted to sending him the damn Noah Samson Manosphere deprogramming playlist. In one ear, out the other, man. Even after I explicitly told him not to talk about this stuff anymore around me, he kept bringing it up. He just kept bringing this stuff up, and it just pissed me off. One of the most tragic things in my life, really. I still think about it and it haunts me. It's the powerlessness, just watching someone slip further and further away until you realize for your own sanity you just can't. You have to mind your own health at a point, He just got eaten. But this is escapism too, isn't it? You think that particular aspect of film and television was a part of what really drew you to it? That very communal aspect?
Yeah, I think that as well. I mean, when you're younger, you're very isolated as a trans and queer and nerdy kid who gets bullied a lot. And I think it put in me this deep longing to find community. I think honestly, if you look at like a recurring theme that occurs throughout my work, be it, film work or be it my video essays or what have you, there's always that undercurrent of finding community and connecting to other people.
I have been like the exact opposite, actually. Like throughout my
Yeah.
life, I make graphic novels. One of the things that really drew me to that was that I have like complete control to like invent my own reality that looks exactly the way that I see it. But I think that also was a means of me trying to connect with people, to speak on a level that I couldn't verbally. Like
I was about to ask you, like that seems like it's still art trying to connect, right?
Yeah. I don't think I would have saw it that way, though. I think I would have described it almost like an attack on the world that was external. But no, it was always, I think, a means of communication. It took me a long time to find words that almost matched how I felt.
Is it on pause?
No, that's just him.
I hadn't forgotten about autism. Abed reminded me of it.
I thought you were like Bill Murray in any of his films, but you're more like Michael Douglas in any of his films.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you have Asperger's.
Then the final season of Mob Psycho came out, and I realized if I was going to get any kind of proper diagnosis, any kind of confirmation of what I felt and saw,
僕が
I was gonna have to make deliberate efforts to go about it myself.
いやごめん聞かなかったことにして兄さんきっとまた勘違いだ恥ずかしい
I'm old enough now. I've already been beaten and battered by high school. I've lived a life of just being a weirdo and suffered the results of going through all of childhood and adolescence being kind of a weirdo. But I can't afford to hate humanity. I live here. I don't have the time or energy to stew on the damage anymore. It is very easy to turn on a world that's slighted you, or that you just don't understand or can't appreciate, but stories, they're simple. Even when they aren't, I can understand stories, analyze characters, write, record, and edit multiple hour-long video essays on the internet to my micro-niche audience, peeling the layers and gaining control over them, twisting the stories, even twisting the world of what is to suit the world that I see. Spock is autistic. Barbie is a bisexual communist. Of course, Sonic has ADHD. Of course, Buffy is queer.
This isn't our town anymore. It belongs to the monsters and the witches and the slayers.
That's what the demon slaying thing really is, you know. When you look at it, it's not like she has a choice. She has to go out into the night and have these bouts with these strange people in secret. Her mother won't understand even if she tries. Her few friends who know of her secret have to cover for her and even protect her sometimes, even when it gets exhausting. Or is that autism again?
Let yourself live. Stop with the bloody hero trip for a sec. We'd all be the better for it. You gotta tell your friends about us. Or I will.
I mean, what does it mean to be neurodivergent? Like, just the word. Your brain works in a way that deviates from the norm. In other words, you're queer. You're weird. That's what Buffy is. That's what Naruto is. That's what Owen is. Except, of course, weird doesn't really exist. And neither really does queer.
There's no time to relax. Shimmy, shimmy, yeah.
Star Trek is real. It's a real show. It's a real series of shows and movies with characters created by real people made to be seen by real people. Sonic is a real game series with shows and movies based on it by real people for real people. These characters, scenarios, and events may be staged, illustrated, and imagined, but they're real. At least, they're as real as you and me. We're also seeing each other through a screen. I am a real person writing words and reading them for real people to hear and think about through a language they understand. That is all real, but also not really. Reality as it is generally understood in the West is defined by its distinction from imagination and perception. The distinction here carries with it the implication that the human experience is something foundationally different from the real. So, who or what has access to that reality? This itself, not always but often, comes with the implication that the human experience is less real or less important than actuality, a concept that people came up with. The alternate view to that being that perhaps there exists a reality that humans just can't access. See Plato's classic theory of the world of forms. There is a reality that exists completely detached from that of the material world, which is even more real. The material world just functions as a distraction from the reality that lies beyond. He made an allegory of a cave which projects shadows on its walls coming from the outside. Those in the cave will only have ever seen these shadows, and have no idea that there is a real world outside where real things happen. You know, the same crap my grandparents told me about TV. Except, I don't know that the line is as rigid as that. The shows on TV rarely made any pretense of being material. They were something else entirely. Not mere imitation, but an imagined realm of its own. But the feelings I had, regardless of what was literally on the screen, those were real.
Just like the dream moments. It's not real. I don't think about it.
Isabel.
Owen rejects the world of the Pinko Pig and remains in that of alleged reality. He has a real job, lives a real life, has a real family. Doesn't feel that way though. Owen is living the life you're supposed to in this world. But it's not... That life is not his. It is a long performance, and he is a poor player. Yeah, it's crazy, stupid, and immature, but he knows that there is another world out there. He can feel it even if he tries to reject the calling. He can feel it gnawing at him. Is he making something up? Is he just confused, or is the structure of what he sees around him incomplete, unreal, artificial? I revisited Sonic for this, went for some answers, you can call it pilgrimage. Went to rediscover myself. I've been doing a lot of that lately. What I think I was most surprised by was the things I did and didn't remember. I remembered almost no particular episodes of Sonic Underground, but I remembered the lore of the characters having been assigned some destiny that they were unable to grasp because they were separated from their mother.
I long for my children, but I have to wait. To act too soon could seal their fate.
I remembered that because for maybe the first 9 or so years of my own life, I had a little feeling that I was an alien sent from somewhere to be here and complete some kind of mission or task that I just haven't yet been filled in on. Surely this whole place was an alien planet and I was due a training arc to find some secret mother, to defeat some big bad that's yet to reveal itself. I eventually grew out of that egotistical nonsense. The show didn't quite get a conclusion either. It was cancelled eventually. Good thing too, the show was ass and the music sucked. For the edgy Saturday morning cartoon, Sonic the Hedgehog, more than anything else, I remembered Robotnik.
Greetings, sire.
And his henchman, Snively.
Hedgehog came along.
Yes, sir, but
Sometimes my brilliance amazes even me. Don't you agree, Snively?
oh yes, sir, but
What?
How scared he was of him. Robotnik/Eggman's henchmen are always goofy and or wisecracking robots or cyborgs, but Snively was a man, a human, and he seemed genuinely afraid of his boss. This version of Robotnik was easily the darkest because he had already taken over Mobius. Sonic and his friends being the radical subversive freedom fighters trying to resist his fascist regime, which sought to literally drain the life from the planet and replace it with machinery. AI. The contrast between the colorful little band of weirdos they were and the sheer horror and threat of roboticization.
Uncle Chuck! Come on, Sugar Hog! Uncle Chuck!
Sonic, we have to leave him.
I was shocked that I'm still a little frightened of that man. Because they let him win. That threat still feels all too real now. But of course, the show that I remembered most was the one I knew was going to be my favorite, Sonic X. Kinda my first anime, kinda changed the structure of my mind, kinda changed the way I draw. But what surprised me was not how much I still enjoy the show, but the parts of it that were most vivid. That being the final third of the show. Based on the Sonic Adventure game,
No time to relax. Shimmy, yay.
Sonic X saw Sonic and his friends and enemies taken to our world, the real world, while trying to find their way back home and prevent Eggman from taking over.
And now the amazing Eggman will do some magic!
The secondary, though I might argue main story, was his relationship with the little boy, Chris Thorndike.
I didn't think you could talk.
Well, I can do a lot of things.
Son of wealthy but neglectful parents who immediately grew attached to these strange creatures.
I think you did a great job.
And particularly Sonic, who seemed to fill a void and give him strength he never would have otherwise found in himself. Of course, the time inevitably comes where he has to go, though, and Christopher just cannot process this. He knows it has to happen, but he cannot bear to go back to his own world, and to his own life.
Now, why do you think Chris ran off? Was it only because of Sonic? Or was Chris afraid that when his friend left, he'd be all alone again like he was before?
I vividly remembered this, and the entire final third of the show, which takes place in Sonic's world.
How embarrassing! What dance is that? I think it is called the jerk.
I was shocked that I remembered almost bar for bar every line, every image from the first episode when they're back in their world.
Don't you have any idea what time it is? Turn down the volume or I'll knock that flying loudspeaker out of the sky!
Just because your boyfriend's not here, don't take it out on me!
That is right! You should not blame Dr. Eggman! I bet the reason Sonic stayed back on that other planet was because he couldn't stand to be with you anymore!
You better cool off, Cupcake. We've got your hammer up here so you can't touch us!
I vividly remembered the fights, the colors, the characters, their dynamics. That one time Sonic went sicko mode and it was never mentioned again.
Settle down, Sonic! I don't think I've ever seen you this worked up before!
And my boy Christopher couldn't part from them either, because he made himself a portal and completely escaped into their world and lived their adventures with them.
We've really missed you. It's about time you showed up.
There was a strange time thing. 6 years passed in the real world, but only 6 months passed in Sonic's world. Kinda how I felt watching this. I'm different now. It's been a while and the whole Sonic thing was a powerful but fleeting at most blur in my life, but revisiting the show, there they were. There were the characters, the colors, the lines, a bit smaller, cheaper, and sillier than I remembered, but there they were. And it was precious being in that world of fantasy, but, you know, that had to end too. I'd like to think Chris didn't come back out the same, though. I found myself drawn to the silences, the gaps in conversation, those awkward silences. I love that. They're painful, but I love that. It is a moment where we allow ourselves to break away from the performance. It's when we aren't carefully calculating the next sleight of hand. I think that might actually be why the silences are so painful. We may have begun to perform without thinking. We forget why we smile at pictures. We begin to wish each other good day without knowing why. We tell our children to say thank you without teaching them the value of appreciation. There's nothing wrong with being courteous, of course, but our interactions have become mechanical. Our relationships become mere transactions. Not lies, but they become performance.
All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages.
To keep up appearances, we become characters, but what happens when something inevitably deviates from the script? We may become so used to the performance that an intrusion can appear to us as an attack on our world. It is in those moments when something goes off script that we forget a line or mess it up, or an unknown character enters the conversation or betrays their role. Even the small things, the folds in clothing, the wrinkles, the uncombed hair, the misstep, a mosquito attack, these moments break the form, but they may open the space for an unpredictable honesty. person may take on many roles, such as father, mother, man, uncle, or friend, based on the scene, perhaps out of necessity. But the character must never join the person.
There is only one Sonic.
Everything we're seeing here is deviation coming in conflict with an alleged invisible stupid thing that we like to call the norm. What we call the norm is also often wrongfully what is called the real. We falsely assume that what we see is the real. What we call weird or queer is defined by deviation from the supposed norm. But well, what is the norm? The clothes the parents bought you? The stuff the advertisers tell you're supposed to care about? Maybe. What is divergent or queer is defined by a lack of conformity with that world of supposed is. But our world is not one that is. There are people who fall through the cracks, who just can't read the contract, who just can't cooperate, you know. They're built different, whose whole existence creates disorder for those who benefit from the prevailing way that things are. As I've been alluding to in this whole essay, reality itself is a spectrum. People are built differently and aren't all going to fit neatly into tidy boxes that we've created for them. We're all a bunch of weirdos who can't behave. Get told you're not doing things properly, that the world you see isn't real, that the way you feel isn't real. They need to grow up, follow the contract, stop making things so difficult for everyone else. So they flee, escaping into and creating worlds that don't attack them for being themselves. We call those people weirdos who watch too much television. Do you think art can change the world?
Ooh, man. Oh, I don't know. I don't think art alone changes the world. I think that's I think that's putting too much on art. What I think art is, what it can do is it can inspire, and it can inspire movements, and it can inspire change. Like, in many ways, art is a reflection of culture. It is especially in mainstream spaces, it sort of reflects the dominant views of things, and you can use that to it's kind of with Star Trek. It's like that view of what progressiveness is. But also, I think art can be a place where people find ways to articulate things that they don't know how to express just yet.
I think if you're watching things and feeling things, that's real. If a world of fiction reveals something to you, there is something real there. I don't think fleeing from the fiery hellscape of the material world is an option, though. Our stories are real because they're made in the real world. They're just given freedom to explore other realities because they won't make too much noise, except when they do.
Just how is blood rights and sacrifices appropriate material for a public school library?
The worlds that we create can open doors that we don't have access to in the world of material, but they can also illuminate the way forward. Owen is a glitch in the Matrix. I am a glitch in the Matrix. But that does not make him unreal. Maybe there really is a reality on the screen that is more real than the real world. But it won't matter unless it is brought to the real world. The trouble there is that when the worlds collide, chaos is inevitable, good or bad. The urge does strike me constantly to just retreat into a hole somewhere and watch movies or rewatch episodes of Seinfeld all day, or Buffy. That's a new favorite of mine now, I think. It's exhausting being in the world of the material and grappling with the things there, increasingly so. But I do think that that is why we cannot afford to let the whole thing burn. I think, maybe naively, I do still think that the world can always be reconstructed to resemble that of what could be. It's just, the further detached that world is, the more difficult the reconstruction is, and it isn't always a good thing. My allergy to overly happy or optimistic endings has me returning to the very real fact that these imagined worlds by human minds still have their faults. Power fantasies of fascists are just as enthralling to them as worlds of queer joy. And the people watching will always take away whatever makes the most sense to them. See the Matrix.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television.
With that, though, and this is the other flip side of the coin, and something that I've grown into as well, is like Star Trek was made as like part of the Hollywood machine within a American culture. And so there's a lot of things within Star Trek that have these sort of like implicit assumptions based on like the white upper class dudes who got to write it.
The shows and movies themselves were still made in the material world and have their faults that we often look past when we're taken by their magic. Those stories that aren't critical enough of the world that is can also easily become reality. I can easily say that I wouldn't be the person I am today had it not been for Sonic and Naruto and Boy Meets World, but I think I've taken damage from all of these stories in small ways. I'm cognizant enough to recognize it and confront the faults, but I overwork myself hardest writing a video essay about how I work too much. Buffy has been embraced as a feminist masterpiece, but the creator of the show is kind of a lecherous, abusive incel with questionable accusations. And when you look for the crumbs of that in the show, you will find them. Gene Roddenberry's utopian vision of the future has opened the eyes of many audience members of all marginalized groups. But if you look for evidence of the racist, misogynistic world the show was made in, you will find it. The works themselves exist in the material world, as works created by people for people with their deeply human and material faults and DNA. But the impacts that they have and what they reveal in people is the power, for better or worse. We do live in a world of material with words and labels that mean nothing but have great consequence. But the things we make and what they reveal to us has the potential to break through and reveal a reality more real than the real. If you listen to it, if you accept it. Especially for those of us who are built different, these realities might be the only thing that makes sense to us. And maybe that's alright, as long as no one's hurt. I suppose all of this really is to say, leave me alone, family, I don't have to get married if I don't want to.
Guy just bugs me.